A lot of our quick tips are results of other quick tips, and that's true with this one. This person was watching Quick Tip 274. That was one we did a long time ago, several years ago. It was on relative value. The person asked, could you please do one just as thorough, going in the opposite direction towards the dark end? Of course, if you haven't seen that quick tip lately or at all, you don't know what he's talking about. But what I was doing was explaining how value changes, or how value changes color, how the light changes color as a color moves towards light. And I was using an orange as an example there. So he or she wants to see what happens as it goes into shadow. So we'll show you that right now. Well, every image we look at carries a certain color, and that color is going to vary from image to image. But when we have images of the same color, such as oranges, we think they're the same color. They're not. If you'll notice, even the local color of oranges will vary from like yellow orange to a redder orange. And so we have that, plus we have light, how light hits images and what happens when light hits images. And this is just one example here, but I'll use this example to show you. I like to use examples of photographic examples to show you, because then we have the same viewpoint. Ideally, you would take a real orange and put it on a table or something and direct a light onto it and study what happens as that orange is moving away from light into shadow. And there you're going to find several kinds of answers depending on the kind of light it is, and the kind of orange that orange is, and all kinds of things. So the principle is the same. It's the principle I like to teach. I know a lot of people like to teach just how to paint images. How do you paint an orange? This is how you paint an orange. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how the principle of color works, and then you have the freedom to observe it and discover it for yourself. And that way you can get a more personal touch to your oranges or your apples or whatever. So he wanted to see what happens as the color, what happens to the color, to the hue, as it moves out of light and into shadow. Now you can see here, of course, you know this picture was doctored. I tried to undoctor it somewhat, but you reach a point where there's really nothing you can do except print what you've got. So this is going to show us an exaggerated version of the hue, but the principle is the same. So we'll just go by what we see. So we can see here in the lightest part of the orange is where the light is hitting. And that tells us then that the light source is up there somewhere in that direction, about right in there. We can tell that because this casts shadow right here. This orange is casting shadow on this orange. And that cast shadow will always guide us towards where the light source is. And so we can just sort of know the light source is somewhere about right there. We can see it striking right here. Okay, look what happens now. Color-wise, a lot of people, when they are going to darken for shadow, just reach for black. And all that does is dull the shadow. It does change the value, but it dulls the color. But you can get a more realistic and a more exciting color if you go by what happens to color as it moves from light into shadow. What I've observed is that warm colors, well, cool colors will do this too, but it's more obvious in warm colors. Warm colors, as they're moving into shadow, have a tendency to change according to their position on the color wheel. That is take that just with a little bit of grain of salt, but let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let me put my color wheel right here. Now, this is yellow orange right here, and this is orange. Every orange you see is going to probably register somewhere between the yellow orange here and the red orange right here. So in this range right here of the tertiary yellow orange, the secondary orange, and the tertiary red orange. Well, as that it can, when the light rays can't hit it anymore, the light rays are coming down, then they're passing over right there. The orange is turning away, so the light rays are passing over, and look what happens. The first thing we see happens is, right now, is that this darker area appears here, and then we see it get a little bit lighter and brighter here. Well, that's because it's sitting in a section of lots of oranges, and the oranges from these other pieces, these other ones, are the color from that is bouncing back onto this. And so that's the reason we're seeing that brighter orange right there. So we'll just need to look in this area right here to see what actually happens as it's falling into shadow. As it goes into shadow, the hue begins to go away. The hue begins to disappear. The orange hue begins to disappear. And we know that one way that we can make hue disappear is to add its complement to it. So if we add its complement of a darker value, then we make the hue, some of the hue go away, and we make it darker at the same time. Now look what happens on the color wheel. The complement, if we start with yellow-orange, the complement is blue-violet. And if we start with orange, the complement is blue. Well, all these colors from blue all the way over red-violet have blue in them. So we could, if we're trying to change the value here, we could begin with adding red-violet into that, and then gradually add a little bit more blue, and we will get that color we need. And let me show you how that works. Something that can be very helpful when you're studying color is to make yourself some test strips. All you need are index cards that you can get from a dollar store, a pack of cards for about $1 or $2, but slice them into little long strips like this, and you can study color, and I'll show you how you can do that. And so I'm going to show you several things at once here now. All right, so we're going to start here. I'm going to start and show you how this works. So here's yellow-orange. Well, I've got a yellow-orange that comes out of the tube called cadmium yellow deep. That's a yellow-orange. Now if I put some of this on one of my test strips and hold it up here, I can see that it's in the same vicinity, but I really would need to add a little bit more red into that to get that local color of orange. So that's where we'll start. You always have to start someplace, and so the best place to start is with a hue that is closest to the hue on the color wheel or on the image itself as you have. And when it's a warm color like this and a more saturated color, we can really see what the color is, what the hue is, then that's where to start. The nearest thing you have to that. Now I need to adjust that, and so I need to add red to it. Add red to yellow-orange, and it becomes more orange. And I happen to have on my palette a red-orange, which is cadmium red light. It's red. It's red-orange. It's red-orange that just teeters towards being very, very close to red. It's a very strong tinting strength, so it won't take much. I'm just going to add some of that into that now and show you. There we go. We can start. Now, if you have cadmium orange, that works. But if you have cadmium yellow deep and cadmium red light, you don't need cadmium orange because you have the ability to make it right here, or make the orange that cadmium orange produces right there. So I'll put this this mixture right here. You see that gets closer to where we are in the way of local color. Now let's put a sample of this here. And I'm just going to show you how this looks on the canvas, how we can gradate that on the canvas as it moves into shadow. So I'll just put the brush down now. All right. I said that if we add a complement, to a lighter and very highly saturated color, we can begin to get a shadow. So anything that has a complement in it, I've found that if we really want to get the color brilliant, not have it turn really desaturated all of a sudden, if we start with where the complement begins to show, the complement of orange is blue, and it begins on the wheel first to show in red violet. And I have a red violet. That red violet is called quinacridone violet, and I put it right here. Now, if I just wanted to change the color without changing the value, I would need, first of all, to get this the same value as this. But that's not what I want this time. I want to change the color and the value. So, what I will do is gradually, I'll bring a little bit of this red violet into this orange. And let's see what we've got there. See, it doesn't take much. That color has a very high tinting strength. So let's see what we've got there. We're very, very close already. All right, now, let's pull that out of the brush. And let's just get a sample of this. And first of all, I'm going to test it on the test strips. See how close I am to that. I'm a little bit skimping my mixture. Look at that. See there? That is almost on the mark of exactly what we see there already. So bring in a little bit more, get a little bit more paint, a little bit more mixed here. Now I'm going to show you something here. Show you two things. One, if the oranges turn, if the oranges turn like it is here, so it's gradually changing value, then you would get a gradation. That means that you would get something like this. So that, you see there? See how close that is right there? So we can start there, and then we would gradate it into that next color like this. Now you see, now I have that gradation. You see how similar this is to what we have right there. If I add a little bit more, let's go back to the palette now so I can be a little bit more scientific with you here. So if I add a little bit more red orange now to this, I need to be a little bit more generous with my mixtures here. Now you see it just continues to get redder, but I might have what I'm seeing right here in this reflection. Let's see if I do. So I'll just put that. By the way, when you're using these test strips, always put the color right on the tip, on the edge. Otherwise, and that way you'll really begin to compare. You see it's right there, right on the nose right there. And it gets a little bit brighter because of this reflective light in here. It gets a little bit brighter, and I believe that calls for a little bit more red. But first of all, before we do that, I'm just going to continue the gradation and show you how this will work all the way through to the darkest dark. Now we have a language in shadow when we're talking about shadow and how things work in shadow. A language I like much better than using numbers. A lot of people depend upon numbers. I like to define it as shallow shadow, where the shallow is not real deep, shallow shadow. Then moderate shadow, where it gets a little darker. We see it darker right in here. And deep shadow, where it gets very, very dark right here. And then right here is an occlusion shadow. So I would like to show you the entire progression so that then you can play with that idea and make it work for you. So then we go here from light into shallow shadow, into moderate shadow. And at this point, you see it's really beginning to show that red. But you see, there it is right there. So when we put the whole thing together, it really begins to work. Now, if you need it, if your orange turns less saturated than that, that means it needs a little bit more blue in it. So this is where blue is going to begin to enter. So this is the way it works on the color wheel. You see it goes yellow, orange to red all the way through, red, violet, and then blue. between the yellow, orange, and the blue on the warm side. So I could add either just violet, or I could go now to blue to begin to get that deep shadow and that occlusion shadow. Now my blue of choice, especially for something like this, is ultramarine blue, which I will put right here. Not phthalo blue or not Prussian blue, because those blues have green in them, and it's just going to turn it green. So we want a blue that doesn't have green in it. Ultramarine blue leans a little bit more towards violet, so it's ideal for getting that deep shadow, adding to this mixture to get that deep shadow and that occlusion shadow. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to now pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I'll add it in here. Let's see now. It's already beginning. Right there. Right there is where we're seeing this. It needs a little bit more of that red in it because of the photograph has been enhanced. If the photograph hadn't been enhanced, we wouldn't see quite so much red in it. But I'm just going to go for what we have here. Always go for what you see, never theory, never what you've been told, but let the color wheel guide you and what you know about what happens when light or when a rounded image goes into shadow. If it's got color, it's going to behave this way. It's going to lean, that shadow's going to begin to lean more on this direction, if it's warm, on this direction towards its complement. If it's cool, it depends on what the hue is, but it's going to lean towards its complement in one direction or another, depending on what the hue is. That's something that really, when you play with an awful lot, you will begin to really see how it works, and you'll get excited about color like I am. Right, there we go. There's that deep shadow. See there, right there on that one? You see there? There's the deep shadow. Now the occlusion shadow right here is going to require more blue. So we'll just add more blue into this, and we want that blue to, see, look at that. See how that blue neutralizes that? Get the test strip back so you can see it even better. I'm skimpy today. I'm really being like Silas Marner with my mixes. You see there? Right up in there. It needs just a little bit more red because of that. If it didn't have that photo enhancement, this would be probably pretty much on the mark of what you would see in that occlusion shadow. That's that deepest shadow where two images touch and squeeze the light out. So let's get the brush again, and we'll show you that gradation. So we build this right here like that. I'm pulling that several times so it will blend. Get that blend here. It's not exactly blended, but enough so that you can see it. Now I'm going to dip the brush into the ultramarine blue and mix the ultramarine blue in here, and you see it will make it almost go black because we have all that. We have the two complements working together now, and that's the occlusion right there. Right there. See that? Isn't that exciting? That's what I call the scientific approach to mixing color. You observe according to what the hue is doing, but you understand first of all what hues do to each other when they get added into each other, what analogous hues, those that are close, sitting next to each other. What they do to each other when you add them into each other is that they change according to what they change into more closely the color that's being added into. If I'm adding yellow into yellow orange, it's going to become more yellow. If I'm adding orange into yellow orange, it's going to become more orange. If I add red or red orange into orange, it's going to become more red. And so if I add the complement, and it goes around the wheel like that, then if I add the complement, they're going to cancel each other out. When you add a complement to a color, to any color, you subtract out hue. So if I'm adding blue into orange, let's go this way, primary against secondary. If I add blue into orange, the blue is going to subtract out, it's going to neutralize, subtract out the hue of orange. And if I keep adding blue in there, all that orange hue is going to go away. And if I keep adding blue, it's going to start turning blue. So that's the way color behaves. Complements will neutralize each other, meaning they subtract their hue out. But as they move around the wheel, that's the way they behave in shadow, because light, the absence of light also fails to reveal the full hue to us. So when any hue moves into shadow, sometimes it will turn into another hue, because the amount of light is not reaching it. Not enough light is reaching it to reveal its local hue. So that's the way that works. And then you can go back to the quick tip. I've forgotten which one it was now. Oh yes, 274. You go back to 274 and see how it works in light. And then get some oranges from the store, put them under a light, and observe color. You can find that doing exercises like this will tell you more about color than all the theory books you will read ever written. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com, where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.